They're waiting for your answer, Dr. Adrian Hale. The conference room had gone so quiet that even the air conditioner sounded loud. Across the polished oak table, 12 members of St. Gabriel Medical Center's board avoided looking directly at me. Not because they respected me, because they were ashamed. Or perhaps they simply didn't want to watch a man lose everything. Board Chairman Victor Lang folded his hands. Before we proceed with the vote, do you wish to defend yourself? The accusation file lay in front of me. Medical negligence, financial misconduct, unauthorized pharmaceutical purchases, manipulation of surgical data. Every page carried my signature. Every signature had been forged. I closed the folder without reading another word. No. A faint smile appeared on someone's face. It belonged to Dr. Evan Cross. 3 months ago, he had arrived from a prestigious hospital overseas. Charming, brilliant with words, exceptionally good at making powerful people feel intelligent. He stood near the projector instead of taking a seat, almost as if the room already belonged to him. I'm sorry it ended this way, Adrian, he said softly. His voice was carefully measured. Not too sympathetic, not too triumphant, just enough for everyone else to admire his professionalism. I truly respected you. I looked at him. You should. His smile twitched. Chairman Lang cleared his throat. The board has reached a unanimous decision. A screen behind him lit up. Termination of Chief of Surgery. Effective immediately. My hospital identification card. Operating privileges revoked. Administrative authority suspended. Research funding frozen. 22 years. Reduced to 1 sentence. Around the table, several department heads lowered their eyes. Dr. Susan Meyer looked like she wanted to say something. She didn't. Neither did anyone else. I stood. The chair scraped quietly against the wooden floor. No shouting. No pleading. No dramatic speech. I simply removed my white coat. The embroidered words, Chief of Surgery, caught the light one last time. I folded it neatly and placed it on the table. You aren't going to argue? Evan asked. I met his gaze. Would it change your vote? Silence. No. Chairman Lang admitted. Then we're finished. I walked toward the door. Behind me someone whispered. I thought he'd fight. Another answered. Maybe he's guilty. I didn't turn around. Because guilt didn't need silence. Truth did. Rain greeted me outside. The reporters were already waiting. Microphones lunged toward my face. Dr. Hale, did you fake clinical reports? Did patients die because of your decisions? Did you steal research grants? Do you admit responsibility? Camera flashes exploded like lightning. I kept walking. Someone shoved a microphone against my shoulder. Doctor, just one statement. I stopped. Hundreds of eyes fixed on me. One sentence. That was all they wanted. I hope the hospital remains safe. Then I left. No denial. No anger. No explanation. The headlines would destroy me before sunset. I knew that. Because I had already read tomorrow's news. Not literally. But I knew Evan. Men like him always became greedy after their first victory. That was when they made mistakes. The taxi driver glanced into the rearview mirror. Tough day. You could say that. They'll forget in a week. I looked through the rain-covered window. No. They'll remember. They just won't remember me the way they expected. My apartment overlooked the river. Simple. Quiet. No luxury despite my salary. Most people assumed surgeons lived extravagantly. I preferred certainty over appearances. The first thing I did after entering wasn't pouring a drink. It wasn't collapsing onto the sofa either. I unlocked a steel cabinet hidden behind a bookshelf. Inside were 6 encrypted hard drives, 3 sealed envelopes, a digital recorder, 2 external servers connected through an isolated network. Everything had dates, times, copies, verification certificates. I inserted the oldest drive into my computer. The screen asked for 3 passwords. After the final confirmation, dozens of folders appeared. Security footage, procurement records, operating room access logs, electronic signature comparisons, voice recordings, every meeting, every suspicious transaction, every unauthorized change, including the ones made by Evan Cross. I stared at the files without opening them. Not yet. If I released everything today, people would say I fabricated evidence after my dismissal. No, evidence needed time. It needed pressure. It needed the guilty to become careless. That was why I'd remained silent. Not because I had lost. Because the game had only begun. A message appeared on my phone. Unknown number. You should have fought harder. A second message followed. Enjoy retirement. I smiled. For the first time that day. Evan always celebrated too early. He couldn't resist reminding his victims that he'd won, which meant he was already making mistakes. The next morning, my phone never stopped ringing. Not because people believed me, because they wanted something from me. Former patients, journalists, medical associations, lawyers offering damage control. I ignored every call except one. Adrian. It was Susan. Her voice sounded exhausted. I know you probably don't want to hear from anyone at the hospital. What happened? She hesitated. You guessed there was something. I asked what happened. They appointed Evan as acting chief of surgery this morning. I looked out across the river. So quickly. The board said the hospital needs stability. And she lowered her voice. He's replacing nearly everyone from your surgical team. That wasn't surprising. Loyal witnesses were dangerous. Anything else? There was another emergency meeting. This interested me. What kind? I wasn't allowed inside. Of course she wasn't. Administrative meetings involving finances were restricted. Exactly where Evan wanted to be. I see. Adrian. She stopped. You really aren't going to defend yourself? I answered honestly. No. But why? Because every lie required another lie. Because ambitious men confused victory with safety. Because desperate people left fingerprints everywhere. Instead, I simply said, some operations fail if you cut too early. She didn't understand. I hope you know what you're doing. So do I. 3 days later, the city newspapers published another headline. New surgical director promises a new era of transparency. There he was, Evan, smiling beside Chairman Lang, wearing the white coat that had once been mine. I wasn't angry. Oddly enough, I felt relieved. Power changed people faster than money ever could, and cameras loved confident liars. That afternoon, someone knocked on my apartment door. Not politely. 3 sharp knocks. When I opened it, I found Noah Ellis, head of hospital cybersecurity. His tie was crooked. His eyes were bloodshot. You knew? I leaned against the doorframe. Knew what? Our servers were accessed. I said nothing. He continued. Someone deleted procurement logs. Interesting. Deleted. Not modified. Deleted. Panic always rushed the guilty. When? Last night. Were backups affected? He stared. How did you know there were backups? I almost laughed. Because I had insisted they exist despite years of complaints about storage costs. Noah swallowed. The board ordered me not to investigate. There it was. The sentence I'd been waiting for. Not investigate. Not report. Hide. What do you want from me? I asked. I don't think you did this. I appreciate the compliment. I'm serious. He stepped closer. The timestamps don't make sense. They never do. I need help. I shook my head. You no longer work for me. I never worked for you. No. You worked for the hospital. He looked defeated. People could die if records are being altered. That sentence lingered between us. Patients. Not reputations. Patients. I finally spoke. If patient safety is compromised. He waited. Document everything. That's it. For now. You have evidence, don't you? I smiled faintly. What makes you think that? The only innocent man I've ever met who stayed silent looked exactly like you. He left without another word. That evening, another anonymous message arrived. Stop talking to hospital employees. A photograph followed, taken from across the street. Someone had been watching my apartment. I zoomed in. The reflection in a parked car revealed something the sender hadn't noticed. A hospital parking permit hanging from the rearview mirror. Not police. Not private investigators. Hospital administration. Careless. Again, I saved the image in a folder labeled Voluntary Mistakes. Near midnight, I poured myself coffee instead of whiskey. Sleep wasn't coming anyway. The encrypted drive sat beside my laptop. Untouched. Not because I doubted them. Because timing mattered more than proof. Then my secure email chimed. One new attachment. No sender name. Only 6 words in the subject line. You missed one operating room. My heartbeat slowed instead of quickening. Attached was a grainy security image. Operating room 9. A room that had officially been closed for renovations. Yet inside the photograph, Evan Cross was performing surgery. The timestamp matched a date when no surgery was supposed to exist. Someone inside the hospital had just risked everything to reach me. And whoever they were, they knew the fraud was far bigger than my dismissal. The image remained on my screen until sunrise. Operating room 9. Officially sealed for renovation. Yet the timestamp embedded in the file was genuine. I enlarged the photograph. The surgical lamps were on. The anesthesia machine displayed active readings. 3 masked assistants surrounded the operating table. Evan stood at the center, confident, comfortable, like a man who believed no one would ever ask why he was operating inside a room that did not officially exist. There was something else. A digital clock mounted above the operating lights. Its time differed from the timestamp by exactly 4 minutes. Not enough to be suspicious to ordinary eyes. Enough to tell me the image hadn't been altered. Someone had photographed a live monitor rather than exporting security footage. That meant one thing. The person helping me was still inside the hospital. My secure email chimed again. No subject. No greeting. Only one sentence. Don't reply. They're monitoring internal communications. The attachment contained a floor plan. Red lines traced a path through maintenance corridors beneath the surgical wing. One room was circled. Archive storage B12. Another message appeared seconds later. He goes there after midnight. Alone. I leaned back. Whoever this person was, they knew the building intimately. Maintenance. Security. Facilities. Someone invisible. Someone people ignored. The best witnesses usually were. At noon my apartment buzzer rang. Noah Ellis stood outside carrying 2 paper cups of coffee. You look terrible, he said. I've looked worse. You've also shaved. I had time. He managed a weak smile before stepping inside. The moment the door closed, his expression hardened. I copied something. He handed me a flash drive. I shouldn't have. No, you shouldn't. I know. I inserted it into an isolated laptop. Dozens of access logs appeared. Hospital servers. Restricted administrator accounts. Late-night activity. Repeated downloads. Patient billing. Procurement contracts. Research databases. One username appeared over and over. ecross_admin. Evan never had administrator privileges, I murmured. He does now. No. He shouldn't. Noah frowned. The board approved temporary executive access. They approved surgical authority. I pointed at the screen. This is financial administration. And procurement. And legal archives. His face slowly lost color. You mean? He expanded his permissions without authorization. Noah whispered. That's impossible. It would be. If he weren't convinced no one was checking. Silence filled the apartment. Then Noah asked the question everyone eventually asked. Why aren't you taking this to the police? I closed the laptop. Because this proves unauthorized access. So, it doesn't prove fraud. It suggests fraud. Suggestions don't survive court. He rubbed his forehead. I hate how patient you are. I've had 22 years of surgical training. You treat criminals like operations. They're more predictable. Meanwhile, across town, the boardroom buzzed with celebration. Champagne glasses clinked together. Chairman Victor Lang smiled at Evan. The media response has been excellent. Our donors appreciate decisive leadership. Evan raised his glass. People don't fear change. They fear uncertainty. And Adrian represented the past. Several board members nodded. Only one remained silent. Treasurer Helen Brooks. She had spent 28 years balancing the hospital's finances. She trusted numbers more than people. Today, the numbers bothered her. She flipped through quarterly reports. One invoice appeared twice. Same supplier. Different amounts. Another purchase listed equipment that had never entered inventory. Helen. Victor interrupted. You've hardly touched your drink. I'm reviewing expenditures. Tomorrow. No. She tapped the papers. Today. Evan's smile remained unchanged. Anything wrong? Probably a clerical error. I'm sure accounting can explain it. I'm sure. But she wasn't. That evening, news channels aired interviews praising the hospital's new era. Former colleagues appeared on television. Some defended me cautiously. Others remained neutral. A few condemned me outright. Watching them didn't hurt. What hurt was seeing young residents forced to repeat prepared statements. I recognized the fear in their eyes. They weren't speaking. They were surviving. My phone vibrated. Susan, I shouldn't be calling. Then why are you? She exhaled shakily. A patient died. I froze. What happened? Officially, yes. Unexpected complications. And unofficially, silence. Then, the medication dosage doesn't make sense. Who signed it? Evan. My grip tightened around the phone. Were you present? No. Who was? I don't know. That answer frightened me more than anything. Surgeons always knew who entered an operating room, unless records had been changed. Late that night, I parked across from St. Gabriel Medical Center. For the first time in 3 days, I wasn't returning as chief of surgery. I wasn't returning at all. I simply watched. Employees came and went. Ambulances arrived. Lights flickered through upper floors. At 12:17 a.m., a black sedan entered the underground garage. Evan stepped out alone. No security. No driver. Exactly as the anonymous email had claimed. He disappeared inside. I checked my watch, then started mine. Not toward the entrance. Toward the alley behind the hospital. There, hidden behind delivery dumpsters, was a rusted maintenance door. Unlocked. Exactly where the floor plan had indicated. The tunnel smelled of disinfectant, damp concrete, and old machinery. Emergency lights cast long orange shadows across exposed pipes. Every step echoed. I knew these corridors. Not because surgeons used them. Because years ago, during a hospital expansion, I had insisted on inspecting every emergency evacuation route. Most executives never bothered. That was their mistake. Institutions always remembered the people who built them. Even after they were fired, I followed the red markings from memory. Left, down one flight, past an abandoned storage room. Finally, archive storage B12. The door stood slightly open. Voices drifted into the hallway. Delete everything older than 6 months. Evan. Another voice answered nervously. But compliance requires. I know what compliance requires. You work for me now. Silence. Then file cabinet slid open. Paper rustled. A shredder began humming. I remained motionless outside. A younger version of me might have stormed inside. Demanded answers. Forced a confrontation. Tonight. I simply listened. The second voice spoke again. What if Dr. Hale kept copies? Evan laughed. He trusted the hospital. You don't understand men like him. They think integrity protects them. I closed my eyes briefly. You still don't understand me. The shredder stopped. Footsteps approached. I slipped into a dark maintenance recess as the door opened. A clerk emerged carrying 2 sealed archive boxes. His hospital badge identified him as Daniel Pierce. Medical Records Department. His shoulders trembled. He looked like a man who knew he was doing something irreversible. After he disappeared down the corridor, Evan remained inside. Phone pressed to his ear. I don't care what it costs. No. He can't come back. Another pause. The board believes everything. They'll sign whatever I put in front of them. My pulse remained steady. Not because I wasn't angry. Because anger clouded observation. Evan ended the call and walked away. Only after his footsteps vanished did I enter archive B12. Half the shelves were empty. Document destruction bins overflowed with shredded paper. Someone had been working for hours. I knelt beside one bin. Mixed among the strips were fragments of patient consent forms, financial approvals, internal audit requests. Someone wasn't destroying evidence carefully. They were destroying it quickly. Fear always rushed the guilty. I photographed everything, not touching a single document. Chain of custody mattered. Then I noticed something strange. One cabinet remained locked. Every other cabinet stood open. This one, still sealed. Interesting. People rarely ignored what they meant to hide. I memorized its identification number, B12-47C, then quietly left. The following morning, Helen Brooks requested an emergency accounting review. Victor frowned. Is that really necessary? It is. Our external auditors already approved the quarter. They approved the documents submitted. And I want the originals. Across the table, Evan smiled. Of course. I'll have records prepare everything. You won't. Helen looked directly at him. I'll retrieve them personally. For the first time, his smile weakened. Only slightly. But she saw it. So did I? Because Noah had secretly activated a remote conference microphone before resigning from the cybersecurity committee. The audio reached an encrypted receiver sitting beside me. Every word, every hesitation, every heartbeat disguised as silence. That afternoon, my anonymous email contact wrote again. Someone knows you're watching. Attached. A photograph. Taken only minutes earlier. It showed me leaving the maintenance tunnel. Someone had photographed me from a rooftop. My chest tightened. Not with fear. With calculation. Someone else was hunting evidence. And they had just confirmed I was part of the hunt. A second attachment appeared. Security camera still frame. A man wearing a hospital security uniform. Face partially hidden beneath a cap. Yet one detail stood out. His right hand. 6 fingers. Recognition hit instantly. Martin Keene. Former military police. now head of hospital security, a man whose personnel file I had approved years earlier. He wasn't loyal to medicine. He was loyal to whoever signed his paycheck. My phone rang before I could think further. Unknown number. I answered. No one spoke. Only slow breathing. Then a calm male voice. You should have fought harder, doctor. Click. The line went dead. I stared at the silent phone. He wanted me to react. To panic. To make a mistake. Instead, I opened a new folder on my encrypted drive. Its name contained only 3 words. They blinked first. Outside my apartment window, dark clouds gathered over the city once again. And somewhere inside St. Gabriel Medical Center, someone was desperately trying to erase a truth that refused to disappear. Rain hammered against my apartment windows before dawn. I hadn't slept. Not because of fear, because patterns refused to let me rest. The anonymous emails. The deleted archives. Operating Room 9. Martin Keene watching me. Helen Brooks demanding original financial records. Individually, they were fragments. Together, they described panic. Not confidence. Confident criminals expanded. Panicked criminals erased. My encrypted laptop chimed. A new message. No subject. No greeting. Just an attachment. A 30-second security clip. The video showed Daniel Pierce entering archive storage B-12 carrying 2 boxes. 7 minutes later, he exited carrying only 1. I replayed it. Again and again. The second box had never left. Someone had hidden it inside the archive room. Not destroyed it. Interesting. A second line appeared beneath the attachment. Cabinet B12-47C. The locked cabinet. The one Evan hadn't opened. Whoever my anonymous ally was. They had been watching the same room. By mid-morning, Noah arrived carrying a backpack instead of coffee. You've started packing, I observed. I resigned. I looked up sharply. You actually did it. They wanted unrestricted access to every server. And I refused. They suspended me. He shrugged. I signed the resignation before they could fire me. I nodded once. They're isolating everyone. I know. He sat opposite me. I also copied one final thing. He produced another encrypted drive. This never existed. It never left the hospital. And I never gave it to you. Our eyes met. Neither of us smiled. He understood the weight of what he was doing. I inserted the drive into my offline workstation. Dozens of server snapshots appeared. Access histories. Deleted user recoveries. System restoration logs. Then, one folder. Emergency credential override. I opened it. Every executive permission granted during the previous month appeared in chronological order. Chairman Victor Lang. Chief Financial Officer. Legal counsel. Then, a hidden administrator account. Its owner field had been erased. But deletion rarely removed everything. The internal identifier remained. Employee number. I didn't need the personnel database. I had memorized executive employee numbers years ago. 01473 belonged to Victor Lang, the chairman himself. I leaned back slowly. Noah frowned. What? Evan isn't acting alone. Across town, Helen Brooks stood inside medical records with folded arms. Daniel Pierce avoided her eyes. I need every procurement document from the last 12 months. Daniel swallowed. We're reorganizing the archive. I'll wait. It may take hours. I'll wait. His hands trembled while searching shelves. Helen noticed. You've worked here 9 years. Yes. I've never seen you nervous. I'm tired. No. She stepped closer. You're frightened. Daniel nearly dropped a folder. I don't know what you're talking about. You do. Before she could say another word, Martin Keene entered the room. Security uniform. Calm smile. Ms. Brooks. The chairman requested your presence. I'm busy. It concerns the hospital. So does this. Martin's smile never changed. I insist. Helen looked at Daniel one last time. His face had gone pale. Something inside her settled. Not certainty. Instinct. She quietly slipped a single invoice into her leather portfolio before following Martin out. Daniel saw her. He said nothing. That evening, Susan knocked on my apartment door. The moment I opened it, I knew something was wrong. She looked exhausted. Mascara smudged. Hands shaking. I resigned. You too. They wanted me to sign a revised surgical report. For the patient who died. She nodded. They changed the timeline. I remained silent. They removed Evan's name. My jaw tightened. And replaced it with. She stared directly into my eyes. Yours. The room fell silent. They're rewriting history. I refused. What happened? I was escorted out. She laughed bitterly. 20 years in that hospital. And security treated me like a criminal. I handed her a glass of water. She didn't drink it. I should have spoken during the board meeting. No. I failed you. You failed yourself. She closed her eyes. I kept thinking someone else would object. They all thought that. Tears gathered, but never fell. I've never been more ashamed. I finally said the words she'd needed to hear. It's not too late. She looked at me. What do you need? Nothing. Her expression hardened. I didn't ask what you wanted. I asked what you need. For the first time since losing my position, I realized I wasn't standing alone anymore. Just after midnight, my anonymous contact sent a final message. Come alone. Below it was an address. Not the hospital. An abandoned records warehouse the hospital had leased years ago before digitizing patient files. Risky. Possibly a trap. I went anyway. The warehouse smelled of dust and mildew. Broken fluorescent lights flickered overhead. Rows of forgotten filing cabinets stretched into darkness. You came. The voice belonged to a middle-aged janitor pushing a cleaning cart. Gray hair. Worn boots. Quiet eyes. I recognized him instantly. Samuel Ortiz. He had worked nights at St. Gabriel for nearly 18 years. Most doctors barely knew his name. I did, because he had once found a lost transplant cooler and prevented an organ from being ruined. People remembered heroes for a day. Hospitals remembered janitors only when floors were dirty. You've been emailing me. Samuel nodded. I wasn't sure you trust me. I trust evidence. He smiled faintly. Good answer. From beneath the cleaning cart, he removed a weathered metal box. I've been cleaning offices for 18 years. You hear things. I see things. He unlocked the box. Inside were dozens of memory cards, audio recorders, photographs, maintenance logs. I started collecting after the first patient disappeared from the billing system. When, 5 years ago, far longer than I expected, I thought someone honest would eventually need them. Why not go to the police? I tried. His smile faded. They told the hospital first. Of course they had. Hospitals carried influence. Influence bought time. And then, my supervisor warned me to forget everything. So you started collecting more. He nodded. I figured one day they'd become too greedy. I almost laughed. They did. Samuel handed me one memory card separately. This one matters most. What is it? Operating room 9. My pulse slowed. What's on it? I don't know. I never watched it. Why? Because if I knew. He met my eyes. I'd eventually tell someone. A careful man. Smarter than anyone had realized. Before I could answer, headlights flashed through the warehouse windows. Samuel's expression changed instantly. They followed you. No. They followed us. Outside, several black SUVs rolled into the parking lot. Car doors slammed shut. Voices echoed through the darkness. Martin Keene stepped out first, flashlight in hand. Behind him, for security officers. None of them looked surprised. Someone had betrayed the meeting. Samuel quietly closed the metal box. His hands remained steady. What now? I looked toward the rear loading exit. Then back at the evidence. Then at the approaching flashlights. No running, I said softly. Samuel frowned. They'll take everything. Not if they choose the wrong box. His eyes widened as he understood. Consequences always belong to the impatient. And Martin Keene had just walked into a decision that would expose far more than he intended. Martin Keene's flashlight cut through the darkness like a blade. There they are. His boots echoed across the concrete floor as 4 security officers spread into formation, surrounding the center aisle. Samuel stood beside me, one hand resting on the weathered metal box. His breathing remained calm. Mine did too. Martin stopped 10 feet away. Dr. Hale. I wondered how long it would take. He smiled without warmth. You've made this unnecessarily difficult. I wasn't aware resigning required permission. This isn't about your resignation. He nodded toward the box. Hand it over. Samuel glanced at me. I gave the smallest shake of my head. Martin noticed. I'll make this simple. He produced a folded document. A court-authorized seizure order. I didn't reach for it. Interesting. It authorizes confiscation of stolen hospital property. I see. You should. His confidence was almost theatrical. You've always been intelligent, Doctor. So don't force us to escalate. I looked at the paper from where I stood. No court seal. No filing number. No judge's signature. Just a hospital letterhead. You forged a warrant. Martin's smile faded. It's an internal authorization. Then don't call it a court order. None of the officers moved. They had heard it too. Martin had lied. A small lie. But lies had a habit of multiplying in front of witnesses. He folded the paper. Take the box. 2 officers stepped forward. Samuel looked at me. I quietly stepped aside. Neither of us resisted. The officers seized the metal box and hurried it toward the exit. Martin laughed softly. I expected more. So did I. His eyes narrowed. What does that mean? Nothing. He searched my face for panic. There was none. For the first time that night. He hesitated. Searched the warehouse. The officers scattered. 15 minutes passed. Empty cabinets. Broken desks. Dust-covered shelves. Nothing. One officer approached Martin. That's all we found. Martin looked back at me. Where are the originals? I thought you had them. His jaw tightened. Samuel suddenly chuckled. The sound echoed through the warehouse. Martin turned sharply. What? Samuel shrugged. You took exactly what Dr. Hale wanted you to take. Martin's face hardened. What are you talking about? The box. He blinked. What about it? It contains broken radios. Silence. The color drained from Martin's face. You? Samuel smiled for the first time. Never asked what was inside. Martin spun toward the exit. Stop them. But it was already too late. The SUV carrying the box had disappeared. The real evidence had never been inside it. It was still exactly where no one expected. Inside an old janitor's cleaning cart. The same cart every security officer had ignored while chasing something that looked valuable. I watched Martin's expression collapse. Greed had blinded him. Again. The following morning, Helen Brooks arrived at the hospital before anyone else. She unlocked her office, closed the blinds, removed the invoice she had hidden inside her portfolio. It matched 3 electronic payments. Same supplier. Different bank accounts. One account traced back to a shell company. She requested ownership records. The answer arrived 38 minutes later. Director. Victor Lang. Helen stared at the screen. No. Her voice barely escaped her lips. Not Evan. Victor. The chairman himself. She immediately requested another search. A second shell company. Authorized representative. Evan Cross. She leaned back in disbelief. The fraud wasn't recent. It had been carefully constructed. Years of inflated equipment purchases. Fake renovation contracts. Research grants redirected through consulting firms. Millions. Not thousands. Millions. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Victor entered with his usual smile. Helen, you've been busy. She closed the folder. Morning. I heard you requested banking records. I did. You should have consulted me first. She looked directly into his eyes. I don't think so. The room became still. Victor's smile slowly disappeared. You've misunderstood some documents. I understand them perfectly. He walked around her desk. Helen, we've worked together for 23 years. Exactly. So don't make this unpleasant. She stood. It already is. You have a choice. So do you? He sighed. I hoped it wouldn't come to this. What? Administrative leave. Effective immediately. She almost laughed. So that's your solution? No. It's your warning. By noon, every major television network carried the same breaking story. Hospital treasurer suspended amid internal review. Victor had moved first. He wanted to destroy Helen's credibility before she could speak. Predictable. My phone rang. Helen. They froze my access. I expected that. They're saying I leaked confidential information. You haven't. Not yet. Her voice steadied. What do? We wait. For what? The moment they stop thinking. That moment arrived sooner than expected. At 3:42 p.m., Noah's encrypted receiver activated automatically. Someone inside the hospital had started downloading nearly every financial archive onto a portable drive. The username flashed across the screen. ecross_admin. Noah frowned. He's copying everything. No. I watched the data transfer climb. He isn't copying. He's stealing. Panic. Exactly as before. Delete. Erase. Take everything. The mistakes always came in the same order. Then, the transfer abruptly stopped. A second login appeared. vlang_admin. Victor. 2 administrator accounts. Logged into the same secure server. At the same time. Seconds later, the system recorded something impossible. Both accounts attempted to delete each other's access logs simultaneously. Noah looked stunned. They're covering themselves. They've stopped trusting each other. I nodded slowly. It's over. The next morning, Federal investigators walked through the front entrance of St. Gabriel Medical Center. Not because of me. Not because of Susan. Not because of Noah. Because Helen had quietly submitted her evidence directly to the National Healthcare Fraud Bureau through an encrypted whistleblower portal before Victor suspended her. No hospital executive had known. No one could intercept it. Inside the executive conference room, investigators placed sealed evidence bags across the table. Bank transfers, equipment invoices, recovered server logs, maintenance photographs, operating room 9 records, audio recordings, and finally, a memory card. Samuel's memory card. The lead investigator connected it to a projector. The room fell silent. Operating room 9 appeared on the screen. The video quality was clear. Evan stood over a patient. No consent form? Asked one assistant nervously. We'll generate it afterward, Evan replied. What about billing? Victor's voice answered through the room's speakerphone. Classify it as emergency research. The recording continued. Medication substitutions. Missing documentation. Illegal procurement. Instructions to alter patient records. No edits. No interruptions. Just the truth. Chairman Victor Lang slowly lowered his head. Evan looked around the room as though searching for someone to save him. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The same board that had watched me lose everything now watched their own leaders destroy themselves. One investigator turned toward me. Dr. Hale. I met his gaze. Yes. You've known for quite some time. I suspected. You could have released this earlier. I could have. Why didn't you? I looked toward Evan. His shoulders had collapsed. His confident smile was gone. His hands trembled. Because desperate men reveal more when they believe they've already won. No one argued. There was nothing left to say. 2 investigators approached Victor. Another placed handcuffs around Evan's wrists. Neither resisted. As they were escorted toward the door, Evan finally looked back at me. You planned this. I shook my head. No, you did. You exposed yourself. His face twisted with disbelief. I never touched your career. You handed it away yourself. The doors closed behind them. The room remained silent. For the second time in my life, I removed nothing from the conference table. This time, there was nothing left worth carrying. The courthouse steps were quieter than the hospital had ever been. There were still cameras, still microphones, still reporters calling my name. The difference was simple. This time, no one chased me. They waited. Respectfully, one reporter finally spoke. Dr. Hale, you've been offered reinstatement as chief of surgery. Will you accept? Another voice followed. The hospital board issued a public apology this morning. A third called out. They're asking you to return immediately. I stopped halfway down the steps. The morning sun reflected off the courthouse windows. For several seconds, I said nothing. Then I answered, no. The crowd fell silent. A young journalist blinked. You don't want your job back. I wanted the hospital back. They're not the same thing. Questions exploded around me. Why refuse? Don't you deserve your position? Isn't this justice? I looked toward St. Gabriel Medical Center rising across the skyline. That building had once been my purpose. Not anymore. You can't rebuild trust by handing back a title. Then I walked away. No dramatic exit. No celebration. Just another quiet decision. 3 days later, I visited the hospital for the first time since the investigation. Not as an employee, as a witness. The lobby felt unfamiliar. Portraits of former chairmen had already been removed. Temporary administrators hurried through hallways carrying stacks of documents. Staff members who once avoided my eyes now stopped in silence. Some nodded. Some apologized. Others simply looked relieved that I was alive and standing. A young surgical resident approached cautiously. Dr. Hale? Yes. I believed what they said about you. He looked down. I'm sorry. I studied him for a moment. How old are you? 27. Were you in that boardroom? No. Were you given all the facts? No. Then learn something from this. He looked back up. Never mistake confidence for integrity. His shoulders relaxed. I won't. He left looking lighter than when he arrived. Perhaps forgiveness wasn't something people earned. Perhaps it was something they learned to carry. Susan waited for me outside the old surgical wing. She smiled for the first time in weeks. It feels strange. It does. They offered me my department back. Will you take it? I already did. She laughed softly. I'm not as stubborn as you. I noticed. They had converted operating room 9 into an evidence archive. Yellow investigation seals still covered the doors. Susan looked at it for a long moment. How many people do you think knew? Enough. And how many stayed silent? Too many. She sighed. I keep replaying that board meeting. You shouldn't. I should have spoken. You've already paid for that silence. She looked at me. What about you? What about me? Don't you feel angry? I thought carefully before answering. I felt disappointed. That's different. Anger demands someone lose. Disappointment asks someone to become better. And if they don't, they live with the consequences. She smiled. That's such an Adrian answer. That afternoon, I drove to a small building on the edge of the city. The sign above the entrance was faded. Riverside Community Health Clinic. The clinic director, Dr. Miriam Chun, greeted me with a firm handshake. I didn't think you'd actually come. You invited me. I expected a polite refusal. She led me through narrow hallways. The walls needed paint. Equipment was outdated. The waiting room overflowed with patients. We can't compete with the big hospitals. She sounded almost apologetic. We don't try. Children laughed in one corner. An elderly couple shared tea while waiting. A nurse comforted a frightened teenager. No luxury. No politics. Just medicine. Miriam folded her arms. I need someone who remembers why this profession exists. You've read too many newspaper interviews. No. I read your patient reviews. That surprised me. She smiled. Titles impress administrators. Patients remember different things. I accepted a temporary consulting position. Not because I needed work. Because I needed peace. The clinic had only 2 operating rooms. One aging ultrasound machine. A budget that barely stretched through each month. Yet every evening, the staff ate dinner together in a tiny break room. No reserved executive tables. No private dining area. Everyone sat wherever there was space. One evening, Samuel Ortiz walked through the front door carrying a toolbox. I looked up in surprise. You followed me. He chuckled. Actually, he glanced toward Miriam. She hired me. Miriam shrugged. I heard he could repair almost anything. Samuel lifted the toolbox. I can. The nurses welcomed him like an old friend. Nobody cared that he had once been a hospital janitor. Here, work mattered more than status. Several weeks later, Noah arrived carrying blueprints. I've started an independent cybersecurity consultancy. Congratulations. I have my first client. He placed the documents on the table. Riverside Community Health Clinic. I looked at Miriam. You planned this. She smiled innocently. I prefer secure medical records. Susan joined the clinic 2 months later. Then 3 former surgical nurses. Then 2 anesthesiologists. Not because I recruited them, because they wanted a place where decisions weren't made in boardrooms. Slowly, the clinic expanded. Room by room. Patient by patient. No grand announcements. No expensive marketing campaign. Only trust. One autumn afternoon, I received a letter from the National College of Surgeons. Inside was an invitation. They wanted me to deliver the keynote address at their annual conference. Topic: Ethics under pressure. I almost declined. Then I remembered the young resident who had apologized. Maybe someone else needed to hear it. The auditorium held nearly 1,000 surgeons. Many expected a dramatic story, a tale of revenge, a blueprint for exposing corruption. Instead, I stood at the podium and said, the greatest mistake I ever made wasn't trusting the wrong people. The room became silent. It was believing that silence always meant weakness. Faces across the audience remained fixed on me. I stayed silent because truth requires timing. But silence without preparation is surrender. Know the difference. No applause interrupted the speech. Not until the very end. When it came, it lasted several minutes. That evening, as I left the conference hall, an elderly man approached slowly with the help of a cane. I know you. His smile was warm. You operated on my heart 12 years ago. I searched his face, then remembered. Mr. Walter Briggs, the retired schoolteacher who had insisted on bringing homemade cookies for every nurse after his surgery. You look well. Because of you. He extended a small paper bag. My granddaughter baked these. I laughed quietly. Thank you. No. He shook his head. Thank you for becoming a doctor before you became famous. After he walked away, I stood alone outside the conference center holding the warm bag of cookies. Not awards. Not promotions. Not headlines. Just a simple reminder of why I had chosen medicine in the first place. For the first time in many years, the future felt lighter than the past. Winter arrived quietly. The city looked cleaner after the first snowfall. Perhaps that was only my imagination. Or perhaps time had a way of covering scars until they became lessons instead of wounds. Riverside Community Health Clinic no longer resembled the struggling building I had first visited. The waiting room had doubled in size. A second recovery ward had opened. New diagnostic equipment lined the imaging department. Not because wealthy investors had appeared, because ordinary people trusted us. Trust was slower than money, but it lasted longer. I finished suturing the final incision on an elderly farmer who had delayed surgery for years because he couldn't afford treatment elsewhere. As I removed my gloves, the young resident assisting me smiled. Perfect closure. No. I shook my head. Good enough. She laughed. You never call your work perfect. Perfection makes surgeons careless. She nodded thoughtfully. I recognized that expression. She wasn't memorizing techniques. She was learning judgment. Those lessons lasted longer. Later that afternoon, Miriam knocked on my office door. You have a visitor. I don't have appointments today. He doesn't have one either. I stepped into the hallway. Chairman Victor Lang stood near the reception desk. Or rather, the man who had once been Chairman Victor Lang. His expensive tailored suits were gone. His hair had turned almost completely gray. The confidence that had filled every board meeting had disappeared. He looked small. He stood when he saw me. Adrian. I waited. I wasn't sure you'd agree to see me. I didn't. He accepted the answer with a tired nod. The receptionist glanced toward me. I quietly said, It's all right. She returned to her desk. Victor remained standing. I won't take much of your time. You already have. A flicker of pain crossed his face. I deserve that. Silence settled between us. Not hostile. Simply honest. Finally he spoke. I was released last month. I had known. The investigation had concluded weeks earlier. He had accepted a plea agreement after cooperating with prosecutors. Years of fraud. Asset forfeiture. Medical licensing permanently revoked. His sentence had been reduced because he disclosed additional financial crimes involving outside contractors. None of it restored what had been lost. I've replayed that board meeting every day. I imagine you have. I wanted to ask. His voice weakened. Whether you could ever forgive me. I looked through the clinic window where nurses were helping an elderly woman into a wheelchair. Life continued. People still needed care. The world had never paused for my suffering. I don't spend my days thinking about you. He lowered his eyes. I know. So forgiveness isn't something you need from me. He looked confused. It's something you have to earn from yourself. His shoulders slumped. I don't know how. Then start by telling the truth whenever it costs you something. He nodded slowly. No arguments. No excuses. Only quiet acceptance. When he turned to leave, he stopped at the door. I destroyed my own life. Yes. I blamed you for a long time. I know. I was wrong. I know. He smiled sadly. You always knew. I suspected. He laughed softly despite himself. Then he walked out into the falling snow. I never saw him again. Several weeks later, I received another unexpected visitor. Evan Cross. Unlike Victor, he had not accepted responsibility. He had fought every charge, lost every appeal, served his sentence, lost his medical license forever. The man entering my office looked nothing like the polished surgeon who had stood before the hospital board. His expensive confidence had vanished. Only bitterness remained. I need 5 minutes. You have 3. He sat without being invited. You think you won. I don't. You took everything. I took nothing. His eyes flashed with anger. You planned every step. No. You manipulated everyone. I watched everyone. That's the same thing. No. It isn't. He leaned forward. If you had released the evidence immediately, you would have destroyed only one crime. His expression tightened. Instead, you revealed all of them. He looked away. For the first time since I had met him, he had no clever reply. Evan remained silent for nearly a minute. Finally, he asked, Were you ever afraid? The question surprised me. Not because of the words. Because of the sincerity behind them. Yes. He frowned. Really? Every day? Then why didn't you fight? I looked at the framed photograph on my bookshelf. Not of awards. Not of hospital ceremonies. It showed the Riverside staff gathered around a young child who had just completed chemotherapy. Everyone was laughing. No titles. No hierarchy. Just people. I've spent my entire career making decisions inside operating rooms. I looked back at him. When a patient is bleeding internally, you don't wave your hands and panic. You stop. You observe. You find the source. Then you act. Evan listened without interrupting. I treated your lies the same way. A long silence followed. Then he stood. I hated you. I know. I thought your silence meant weakness. So did many people. I was wrong. Yes. He walked toward the door. Halfway there, he stopped. I don't expect forgiveness. You shouldn't. But. He hesitated. I'm sorry. The words were awkward. Incomplete. Late. Yet genuine. I simply nodded. He left without looking back. That was enough. Some endings did not require reconciliation. Only truth. Spring returned to the city. Cherry blossoms lined the streets outside Riverside Clinic. Children chased one another through the small community garden volunteers had planted the previous year. Samuel adjusted a sprinkler while arguing cheerfully with Noah about the best way to protect the clinic's computer network. Susan rolled her eyes. You two argue like brothers. We're both right, Noah insisted. Samuel laughed. That's impossible. Miriam stepped outside carrying coffee for everyone. Break time. The staff gathered beneath the flowering trees. No one mentioned St. Gabriel anymore. Its new administration had rebuilt the hospital under strict oversight. Several honest physicians had returned. Others had chosen different paths. Life had continued, as it always did. The young resident who had once apologized approached me carrying a folder. I've accepted a fellowship. Congratulations. She smiled nervously. I wanted to ask one last question. Go ahead. What was the most important lesson you learned? I looked around. At the clinic. At my friends. At the patients arriving through the front doors. At the ordinary life I had never imagined wanting. Then I answered. People often think justice begins when the guilty are punished. She waited. It doesn't. It begins the moment you stop helping them hide. She wrote the sentence down. I'll remember it. I hope you never need it. She smiled. So do I. That evening, after everyone had gone home, I locked the clinic doors and stood alone beneath the fading sunlight. Years earlier, I had walked out of a hospital carrying nothing but silence. People thought silence meant defeat. They were wrong. Silence had given greed room to reveal itself. Truth had never needed revenge. Only patience. The river beyond the clinic reflected the colors of the setting sun. I watched the water for a long time before turning off the last light. Tomorrow there would be new patients, new surgeries, new challenges. Not because I had reclaimed the life that was taken from me, but because I had built one no one could ever take again.